Garrett Salpeter, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me, and it's great to be here with you and at the middle of a fun event here. All is good.
Yeah, the BiohackingCongress here in Austin. This would be good.
Yeah,
I've never been to one of these, but it seems like a pretty sweet event. But
it's nice. It's a kind of more intimate setting here. It's fun. Good people. A lot of good conversations.
Yeah. Before we get too into the show, curious, like, how did the talk go? Do you feel like it went well?
I think it went well. Yeah. We had good questions, good feedback. People seemed into it, so I think I was very pleased.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'm excited. I've been following you for a while, and I know we run in a lot of the same circles, and like you've listened to obviously other shows that have been on the podcast, which is cool. So thank you for doing that.
You interviewed a few of my friends. Now I was kind of envious, right?
Yeah.
Now I get to be on
the show.
Now I get to be on the show. I had podcast envy.
But this will be great. I'm honestly like super excited about this one, and so just like I want to jump right into it because I know like we're probably kind of on a time crunch here, but like I want to jump right into like where did entrepreneurship start for you, and like what was your first experience with it just overall?
It's funny to reflect back. It may have started even in like 7th grade. I remember this time where I at the time, these laser pointers were really cool, and like people would be shining them at like sports games and shining them on the athletes and stuff. And there was like a little period where there was like announcements at I grew up in Chicago, so like at Blackhawks or at Bulls games or something, they'd be like, no shining laser pointers, and like they were really popular for some brief window in time there. And so I ordered a bunch. I went online. It was early days of the internet, right, where there wasn't a ton of like e-commerce either. But I went online and I found I could get 100 of them from China at like super low per unit cost, and then I started selling them to my classmates in school and making a profit. And the principal found out, and I got in trouble.
Totally.
And the principal brought my mom in and was like, "Did you know he was doing this?" And she was like, "Yeah." And the principal was like, "Well, do you know how like bad or how dangerous it is?" She's like, aren't you going to try to stop him? And she's like, "I thought it was a good business idea."
Right. Dude, I can totally relate to that because I remember actually getting in trouble for having laser pointers. So I'm sure like teachers hated you because like I'm sure kids in the classroom like shining at the teacher.
I know.
Totally. Actually, total side note, it actually reminds me of when I was a kid. We used to like sit in my bedroom and we would like shine on my cars at night that would like drive by. And one time, no joke, they saw that we were doing it. They got so mad, they went home and got a paintball gun and they came back and paintballed their house.
Oh my gosh.
Because we shot it with a laser pen. It was like, what the heck?
Well, now I'm thinking about it, like if someone did that to me, I'd be scared because I would think it was like a laser scope on a gun or something. So I'd be terrified now. I had no concept of that at that time, but
I wouldn't do it now. Now it would be like way more dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Honestly, like I don't think a lot of people have that experience of like selling stuff young as a kid like that. So did you enjoy the experience of like doing sales as a kid then, and did you just like follow that journey at all, or where did you go with that?
I guess I did. So my kind of first then quote unquote real job. I mean, I had like done counseling at some hockey camps in the summers, and done some other stuff here and there. But like my first kind of real job was in college summers. I would sell Cutco knives. So I know some people have that experience, or they have the experience of someone in their neighborhood pestering them to try to buy Cutco knives, right? But I did that, and I mean, I don't think I'm like a full on sales person, but it was a great experience. Right. To have to get out of my comfort zone and share that presentation with people, and to learn some of the skills of communication, and having the courage to ask for the order or to ask for referrals and stuff like that. It was a really good experience, and I think I learned a lot.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of value in like having an early sales job of some form.
Yeah. Of
like learning how to deal with rejection.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that still shows up today, like with some of the stuff you're doing with NeuFit in terms of business?
I think so. I think like that part of learning rejection, learning to be resilient. I mean, as wonderful as the product is, and as many people like it and say yes, there's people who say no, and for whatever reason, and it's understanding like, okay, we'll go on to the next one. But I think it was that like being able to see the connection between my effort and the results, or between the process and the outcome. And so being able to know that like one part of it is an abundance mindset, knowing if someone says no, there's still hundreds or thousands of other good fit candidates out there that can say yes.
Totally.
And it's also up to me or our team. Thankfully, we have a wonderful team that's doing a lot of the day-to-day activities. But knowing that we have some say in the matter and that we can be proactive and make the effort to connect with people and share the message, and then find the ones that it resonates with, and it's great.
Totally.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into what you're doing with NeuFit, because I know that's going to be a super fun part of this conversation, I do want to kind of circle back a little bit of like what happened in between those days of like you were selling laser pens, and then you went on to like selling knives, and then eventually you went to college. And I do know quite a bit about your story. Honestly, I do a lot of research on guests before I like start talking to them, so I know like a little bit the origin of like where NeuFit started. But what about like that interim of like between those days? Like what are those like fill in the story of like the middle gap between there, what you were doing and what you were up to?
So I talked about these two instances of sales, but as I look at the kind of through line of my life, those are fairly small blips on the radar. I mean, I was like a really focused student and really focused hockey player. I mean, I was like, really focused on getting good grades, and some of that was probably external motivation of wanting to please my parents or get into a good college and stuff like that. But regardless of that, that's what I was. I was really into that, and I identified as a hockey player. I mean, that was like, I worked my butt off. One summer, in my driveway, I got a bucket of pucks, and I would count. I shot 75,000 pucks at a net in my driveway over the course of a summer, and so I just absolutely loved it. I developed a pretty good shot. I was never able to figure out how to get fast enough or good enough to, never a risk of making the NHL. But again, it was another example of like seeing that I can put effort in and I can actually improve, and by the time I actually learned some of these principles of the nervous system, I actually was able to make even more progress and do some cool things even with myself. But
were you learning the nervous system stuff like at an earlier age, like high school, college age, or
so the my first really entry point into this whole world of functional neurology and the stuff that we're doing, first entry point was actually towards the end of my time in college. So I was a really focused student. I was a physics major because I loved thinking about things from first principles and had a very scientific, engineering oriented mind. And so I was set to go to engineering grad school. And that's actually how I got down here to Austin. I came to grad school at UT. Mm-hmm. It's funny, 15 years ago, people were saying, "Oh, there's so many people moving here. Austin's getting so big."
Yeah,
now 15 years later, right? Same story.
Same story.
But so I was set to do that, and I was playing Division III ice hockey up in college in New England. I was mostly a practice squad player and stuff, but even that for me was a lot of progress even to get to that type of level. So it was a big part of my journey. But I had an injury there where I had some torn ligaments. I was supposed to have surgery and be out for a few months. And because of my previous experiences with physical therapy and orthopedic medicine, I just figured that is how, okay, I don't have to get surgery. And I was kind of disappointed, disenfranchised with physical medicine at the time. And so I figured that was how it would be. And then I had this amazing experience where I met a doctor who was doing functional neurology, and he was using older versions of direct current. And I worked with him, and by applying these two things, by working on the nervous system function, by managing the neurological response to injury and activating all the muscles around that tissue so they could support it as it healed, and getting the nervous system to overall upregulate the healing process, and using direct current to help create these electric fields that draw the healing cells there and help kind of kickstart or accelerate that healing process. By going through this, my ligaments healed on their own. I avoided surgery, and I was so excited, not only because I was able to avoid surgery and get back on the ice faster, which, believe me, I was excited about that.
Totally.
But as a physics major and a pre-engineering student, to find something that also made sense from first principles and really kind of resonated with my scientific mindset, that was so exciting to me. And going through that experience, I just felt this powerful calling to share this work with as many people as I could. And so I knew somehow I was going to start doing something related to this in my life. And I had no idea at the time what it would look like. But
I love the concept of like scratch your own itch. Mm-hmm. I see that so often with like probably 99% of the people that I get on the show. Is like so much of what they're doing today is just like a challenge that they experienced in their life. And because there's so much to be said about like being able to relate to people on a real level. Like you had the personal experience of like going from a bad place where you couldn't play your favorite thing in the world to being able to play again. I'd also be curious too is like the identity aspect of that, of like, do you feel like there was like, when did that identity shift happen for you, like from being a hockey player and an athlete to I guess now a business owner essentially? Like when did that happen?
That was a hard one, and that's one that I think about quite a bit, because to kind of lose that part when I graduated college and realized I was going to play less and less hockey. I mean I'm grateful to say I never got depressed or anything like that, but I think I had a little bit of a version of that, of like, this thing, there's like a little bit of a void in my life, and it was a change in identity, and I'm grateful that through the process of hockey and everything, I found this work that I'm so passionate about. Kind of blends engineering and neuroscience. So I came here for grad school in engineering, did some additional work in neuroscience, and so I think I was very fortunate to find something where I was putting in all this effort into hockey and being able to find something else where I could kind of put that same level of drive and effort and really I think also having the blessing of knowing what it feels like to really dedicate myself fully to something and be able to go all in and be able to push hard through obstacles and face adversity and stuff like that. So a lot of that skill and mindset to be able to have an avenue for deploying that, I think was really helpful, and that's probably why I didn't have some of the depression or things that I might have. But there were, I had like dreams about hockey for a long time, and like it was a transition. It wasn't just like one day to the next. It was a transition period for sure.
Playing for the Blackhawks.
Yeah, right.
Patrick Kane.
That's right.
Tays.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I grew up in Minnesota. Hockey's huge there, obviously.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So yeah, I know all about it.
It's fun now. We get to work with some pro athletes, and
that's awesome.
So Minnesota. Were you a Brent Burns fan when he played for the Wild? So, So he actually in my book he wrote an endorsement on the back. So I was very grateful to him. He's done some video content with him. Did you know that he has a ranch here in Fredericksburg?
No.
So he lives. So if you're a hockey fan, you probably know him. He won the Norris Trophy several years ago as the best defenseman in the league. People know him for his long beard, but if you don't know who he is, he's a Canadian hockey player. Been one of the best for 17 or 18 years in his career, and he has a 400-acre ranch in Fredericksburg, so just outside of Austin here, and he raises these like exotic animals, and he's like a really good steward of the land, and he's a really fascinating guy.
For hunting or just to have them?
So some both. So he does some hunting, and he raises the animals, and
this is the most off-topic answer to like what we're talking about right now, but I gotta hit it really quick.
Yeah.
But like I met a girl here in Austin recently who she was telling me that she has this like zebra rug. And I was like, why do you have a zebra rug? And she's like, well, my mom wanted to go hunt a zebra. And so she found somewhere you could hunt zebras here in Texas, and like hunted a zebra and shot it and gotten zebra meat and whatever. And I was like, that is, I feel like one of the most Texan.
Is the meat striped too? It's like zebra steaks, right?
I was like baffled. I was like, okay, I know I'm in Texas. Like when she's telling me like she has the zebra meat in her freezer. Yeah. And I was like, why do you have zebra meat in your freezer? Like,
I have never heard of that.
I had not either.
But I guess people hunt all sorts of exotic,
especially here
and stuff. And
in this state, like there's. Anyways, so off topic, it's ridiculous. But I want to get back to.
I'll always remember this conversation, this episode, right? Because of that. I'll
making it memorable with the zebra meat, yeah. But I want to get back to just that identity shift piece of it, because I think it's really important for people to kind of like understand that aspect of it, because I think it's so huge to understand where so much of what we do is driven by identity, right? Mm-hmm. And so I know for a lot of athletes and a lot of other people that I talk to, just like that transition of like going from whether it's working at a job or being a personal trainer or being a chiro to actually being a business owner, and like what kind of happens there and like that change in people. So I'd be curious for you as to like, did you jump straight into starting the business, or like how did that, you know what I mean? Like how did that happen for you? I feel like that's challenging for a lot of people.
So the initial identity shift for me was actually kind of, becoming the person who was in there working with people directly, hands-on, helping them, feel better, or create those wow moments where people get out of pain in their first session and they make this wonderful progress, or they recover from surgery months ahead of schedule. So when I was here in engineering school, I met the chiropractor who at the time was treating the UT football team. So he had a private practice, and he'd go in there like 2 days a week or whatever and treat them. And so I rented a 120 square foot room in his office in Rollingwood, right here off of Mopac and BK's Road.
As an engineering student.
So
that is profound.
This was my side hustle. So it was as I was finishing up my engineering. I did this. So I started.
You must have been an odd engineering student. People were like, "What are you doing? Like, why are you not in the factory?" Or I don't even know where. I was hacking away on a computer. I don't know. Like what?
I was in the lab. I was the only white male in my lab. It was all Indian and Korean people.
Oh, really?
So I was a bit of an odd duck already.
Okay. Right? So going to the chiro clinic was like, all right, whatever.
So I guess.
We like that you're not duck though. So just want to preface that. But.
So I started treating people out of there, and I'd collaborate a little bit with this chiropractor, and I was not, I'm obviously not a PT or OT like you were. I not a clinician, but I was working under his oversight, so everything was good. And I started using just like old school direct current, and so we couldn't turn it up as high. There's a lot of limitations, but applying these principles of functional neurology and direct current. My first summer when I was in engineering school, when I was supposed to be in the lab here working, I went and did an apprenticeship with this doctor that had helped me, and just really wanted to dive in and learn more about the functional neurology side. So then when I came back from that, I was like, okay, I gotta start doing this. So I was in there working with people, and then originally it was a PhD program. I ended up pivoting and just leaving early with my master's because I found out this is what I want to be doing. And so I was doing this, for 5 or 6 years, actually being in there treating people, and it was so rewarding, so amazing. And I started to identify as like the practitioner, the hands-on guy who was doing that. So that was kind of where I first really got to deploy that drive and that passion and that enthusiasm. Totally. So I was working on that, and then over those 6 or 7 years, I kind of call that like my laboratory period. I then moved down in the same office building down into the dungeon, so it was a little bit of a bigger office, right underneath the chiropractor's office. So from 120 square feet to 600 square feet maybe, but it had no windows. So it was literally like this.
Come to my dungeon.
It was like this room in the office that they were like storing a bunch of stuff. So I asked the landlord one day, I was like, hey, is that for rent? And they were like, sure.
Oh my gosh.
So I had to expand a little bit. And during that time, hired another guy to start working and taking on some sessions and stuff. But for a few years, I was talking to people on the phone, answering calls, making appointments, accepting payment, running sessions, like literally doing a one-man shop. And over time, it was amazing that it grew, and we get referrals, and I had to hire another person, and it was wonderful. And I kept seeing, of course, looking at it with an engineering mindset, I kept seeing opportunities like, gosh, I really wish the technology could do that, or I really think there's an avenue to be able to do this. And eventually, I actually had a patient come in who was a patent attorney, and I helped him get over an injury and make a lot of progress. And so I started talking to him, and he was the one who said, I told him some of my ideas, and he was like, some of those you could probably get a patent. And that was one of the things where it clicked, like, oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could, instead of waiting for someone else to come out with it and just using it and opening more clinics and stuff, that's what I thought I'd do. Like if I could have a few clinics around town with, if someone else could come out with, kind of more modern, like effective versions of the technology, I'd do that. But I had these two wonderful kind of catalysts to help launch NeuFit essentially. So one of them was meeting this patent attorney who said, you probably could file a patent. And another one, I had another client who I was talking to. He's a big real estate guy in town. Owns a lot of real estate and everything. I helped him, and he's a business guy, so he's asking about the business. I told him some ideas, and he said, in one of my office buildings, there's an engineering firm, and they do a lot of really sophisticated stuff, including some stuff for like Department of Defense and things like that. So if you ever want to meet them, they could probably help you like with prototypes and stuff. And I was like, yes, let's do it. And so I started working with them. So I started doing that in 2009, like kind of hands-on work with people. And then in 2015, so 6 years later, started working with that engineering firm to develop the prototype. And then that, glad going into it. I didn't know how long and how expensive it was going to be, but then so it was mid 2015, and then in late 2017 we finally got our first production devices that we could promote and sell.
So it took years to get the product.
2.5 years,
Damn.
of work to develop that.
There's so many things I want to pull out of everything you said, because it was great. Honestly, it's so cool that first of all you're an engineer. And then you dabbled into this world of like essentially healthcare in a lot of ways, and we're actually treating people, you were listening to people, you were trying to solve problems, which I want people to take away from this is that like, I think we forget so often that like it just comes down to essentially service and listening is really what it came down to. Is like you were just like trying to help people solve these problems, and you were looking for other ways to maybe solve it better and listening for other opportunities that were showing up. Because like essentially it came knocking at your door of like, hey, there's this other thing, you could have a patent and you can actually create your own, and then you started meeting people that could actually build the product for you. Mm-hmm. I think so often we try to take another approach where you just like build it and they will come, which often doesn't work for most people, right? You were taking the opposite of just like listening to like what the opportunities were, which I think is super, super cool. And the other thing too that I want to pull out of that is like just the consistency of it. Like I think you said you were doing it for 7 years or something like that?
Yeah.
Like most people think like, oh yeah, I'll be doing my own thing in like a year, and it's like, well, maybe not, right? Like there's a degree of like learning your craft.
There's that like it takes 10 years to become an overnight success, right? Or one of those like one of those types of things. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that. Yeah.
No, so much, right? Like, and you're a living example of that. Okay, so after the couple years of like actually getting the actual device to start using on people, like, did you just start like trialing it? Like, how did you even figure out how to start using this thing?
So when like early on in 2009 or back in like 2017?
2017, like when you actually like have the product and you can start using it on people.
So we were able to build off of, I had those 6, by that point with the development, plus 2. So those 8 years of working in the clinic with older technology and having all these ideas for how to apply direct current and these principles of neuroscience. And then we had 6 to 8 months using actually testing in our clinic with prototypes. You'd have to have people sign a waiver, like, I understand this isn't FDA cleared yet and stuff. But so we actually got a lot of use with those prototypes, and I think I had a really clear sense of how we wanted to use it once it launched because of that experience. It was essentially just a very natural next step on the progression of the work I had been doing for those previous 8 years. So it was pretty easy to switch from using something antiquated to using our version of it. It was direct current, and just had more of what we wanted to do. It was like we could finally like take the governor off and go full speed, or whatever the metaphor is.
Yeah. This might sound like a random question, but I'll preface why I'm asking it. And my question essentially is like, do you think that you have an addictive personality at all? And the reason that I asked that is like I was actually with a couple buddies last night at Austin Proper, and we all kind of like resonated.
At the Peacock?
Yeah.
Oh, I love that place.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Great vibes, for the record.
Yeah.
Like very cool people, very chill.
So in Chicago, growing up for a period of several years, my dad lived in Greektown. So he had an apartment down there, and I'd go back and forth, spend some time with my dad. And every time we went there, I'd go to a couple of these Greek restaurants and get saganaki, the flaming cheese where they have the cheese they put on fire and say,
yes.
And so they have that at the Peacock, and it's really good.
Yeah, I saw it. I saw somebody at a table with it. I thought his hand was going to start on fire when he fucking lit this thing. But that's funny you say that. But anyways, so I was with them, and we brought up that idea of like an addictive personality, and because I can definitely resonate it with well, and that's why I'm curious as to like where you stand on it, because I see that a lot in just business owners in general. I feel like there is some degree of like one, sort of being addicted to your business, but two, almost just like naturally having this like addictive personality of like wanting to continue to pursue, like, because I felt like there was a flavor of that even with you with being a hockey athlete. And so I'm curious, like, where do you feel like you stand on that?
That's interesting. It's one of those where I would probably say no, and my wife would probably say yes, and she'd probably be right, because she can observe me more impartially. But
and it's not a bad thing, right? I think it's just like a realization of like when you love something, you just kind of obsess over it. Right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. But.
I've definitely. I mean, if I look, like I hear myself talk about shooting 75,000 pucks in one summer or something like that, probably has elements of addiction. And now, like I certainly think about my business a lot. I have to be very intentional about shutting down the computer, taking time off, scheduling to make sure I do things with my family and things like that, because I think I probably do have definitely a drive to work in the business, because I'm just so enamored with and so in love with like the impact that we make and the work, and just love so many elements of it. So there probably is an element of that. As much as my first instinct would be to say no, upon reflection, there's probably some of that.
And I can resonate a lot with that, because like even I remember in college, like when you're partying and drinking and whatever, and like you'd have a chew or you'd smoke a cigarette or whatever, and like I never got addicted to it, so I don't see it from like that angle, but I do see it from like more of the ambition to continue to go after something like that. To me is very addictive.
Well, it probably is. Like I'm thankful I don't have, at least that I perceive, any like cigarettes or things that are gonna break me down or sabotage my health. But I probably do. I've been doing a lot of meditation recently. Just kind of started. I dabbled with it, but I started doing it like consistently the last 60 days or so. And so I'm
Congrats.
Thank you. But so part of it is being more aware of my thoughts, right, and what's going, like the contents of my own consciousness. And I do notice that I think a lot about NeuFit and this work and stuff like that. So being more aware of it now, I do think that I have kind of reflexively or compulsively think a lot about it. So in that sense, that might be like an addiction, like someone who might reach for a cigarette and not even really realize it. It's just like a habit. For me, thinking about work or checking my email or something like that, that's one thing I've done during this process. I started tracking how many times I opened email during the day. I think that was an addiction.
50, 100? What do you
So, it was 50 or more. But then when I started tracking it, then I got it less than 10.
Yep.
And oh my God, that changed my life for the better. That was such a relief to be like 5 or fewer times checking my email during the day. So I tracked it for 3 weeks. I literally would put a tally in my little journal every time I did it. And so that quality of life, if you want a quality of life hack, for me, that was a big one. Just tracking it, becoming aware of it, naturally made me do it less.
I think less phone in general, right? Yeah. Is like, because I have like a focus mode and do not disturb, and I pretty much live in like all those as much as humanly possible, because it like deters me. It just creates kind of a barrier to being able to like look at my phone, which I love now. And it's funny though too, because like I think it's actually more or less, and maybe I'm just in a bubble because we're in Austin, Texas, and we for sure live in a bubble, but I think there's a lot more intentionality behind a lot of that stuff. I was talking to a guy recently who works for Tinder, and he's like creating another app that's like more for like basically bringing events and community together. And he was talking about like, if you look at the trends of like app usage is actually going way down. Is like people are actually trying to like get off of them and use them actually less, just across the board. He says like actually the apps that do really well now are ones that you can get in, you get what you need, and you like get on and move on with your life. Not ones that like just suck you in like a... Not
Instagram or
right,
something like that.
Right, or like whatever that game was that everybody played for a while. I can't remember what it was called, but like some sort of... doesn't matter. But anyways, I think there's just a trend of people...
I was too busy on my email to play that game.
Yeah. I wish I could remember what it was called. It was like the most mindless game that everybody played. You like swiped these like gems or something like that. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But yeah, I think
is it Subway Surfers? Because my kids are playing that. I don't know.
Is that the newest addiction?
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Doesn't matter. Anyways, the point is just like I think a lot of people are moving that direction and just like being more mindful about it. So have you started to notice it in your life now? Because I very distinctly remember the moment like when I started meditating, the day where I started seeing showing up in my life. Have you started noticing the impacts of it at all yet?
I think so. I think I already had some of the mindset from different learnings along the way of trying to look at myself more objectively and being aware of my emotional state and and just kind of recognizing it, letting it run its course, not trying to get caught up in it, not trying to identify with my emotions and things like that. So I think I kind of had some of that, but it's definitely, I think Naval Ravikant had a really good description here that resonates with me. It's not, enlightenment is not like some destination that you reach. It's not do I reach enlightenment? Enlightenment is actually the level of awareness that you have of the contents of your consciousness in the present moment. So it's not are you enlightened? It's how enlightened are you, or how much time during the day are you enlightened? Are you enlightened 3% of the time, 30% of the time, 50% of the time? So it's how often are you truly aware of your consciousness versus being lost in thought and identifying with that as your sense of self and things like that. So
totally. I like that.
So I think most people do. I think I probably had, a percentage of time already. And then I think since I've been formally more regularly practicing meditating, that percentage of time has increased.
Totally. Yeah, I would associate it to like the difference between like a light switch versus like the dimming of the light, I would say. Mm-hmm. It's not something you turn on or off, it's just basically how bright the light is. Mm-hmm. And so you're saying your light is essentially a little bit brighter.
Yeah.
You're a little bit more aware of the day-to-days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
Side note, I was on a walk on Auditorium Shores Trail the other day, mm-hmm. and this random girl. So what do you use to meditate? Let me ask that first.
I've been using the Waking Up by Sam Harris.
Love Sam Harris.
Yeah.
Side note. But have you ever heard of Insight Timer? It's another common. No. Anyways, it's another common one. And I was on the trail the other day, and all of a sudden some random girl, never met her in my life, and she's like, "Hey, are you Corey Hiben?" And I was like, "Do I know you?" And she's like, "We meditate at the same time on Insight Timer." I was like, "What?" Because like when you
that's amazing.
It was fascinating, and I was like, "What?" Because like when you meditate on this app, when you're done, it'll show you like people around you that also use the app like in your community, and it's like a headshot of like all these other people.
Oh wow, it's like a meetup meditation.
Sort of, and
interesting.
Like, but and she's like, because like so she saw my face on there, and then she saw me obviously out in public. And
you have a voice for podcast and a face for meditating.
Right. I was blown away. It's one of the reasons I love this town though, is because like there's over 1 million people here, but at the same time it feels very just like small town.
Yeah.
Like you run into people that you know all the time,
sure.
which is what I love about it.
Yeah.
But anyways, I'm gonna get back to you. So, NeuFit. Let's get into that a little bit. Where are we at? How are things going? Are you satisfied so far? And also, you can take any of these questions that you want. The other one I would also like to know too is like, what's maybe like the biggest challenge or maybe even like the biggest mistake you've made with NeuFit that you've learned from? And that could be emotionally, that could be monetarily, it could be whatever. But
there's definitely a few mistakes. So in terms of where we are, we've had our device out. So as we're sitting here in early 2023, we've had the newbie out for sale, officially for about 5.5 years. And it's so interesting because it's reflecting back, amazing to see the progress. It's being used in 300 something clinics, being used by between 15 and 20 professional sports teams and athletes like Saquon Barkley. Are using it, and Mike Tyson used it to prepare for his fight with Roy Jones Jr. And
really?
We've got, like all these people on video talking about how amazing the newbie is, right? And
did you meet his lion or tiger? Or whatever he was?
So I didn't work with Mike personally, but I did get to go work with Saquon, and we filmed a video together in his home gym. It's really, really cool. I can share the link with you for the show notes or something.
I love that.
But, so we've got all these, and these teams and just really wonderful progress in universities. Using it. Our director of sports medicine for NeuFit was full-time at University of Texas here with the athletic department and still treats athletes there. So reflecting back, really wonderful progress, and it's been amazing to see people are able to take this work that we were doing here and not only get those same types of outcomes with new people that we'd never reach, but also start to work with new populations and different types of things, and we can collaborate and learn even more together and run studies together. And so there's like this, we call it NeuFit Nation. It's a really wonderful, powerful sense of community. If only now we could all meditate at the same time too and see each other's, right?
Yeah, you need some headshots.
Yeah.
Build some community.
So there's there's opportunities there, but and so looking back, it's really wonderful, and then looking forward, it's also very humbling because it's like look, we've climbed up this point, but then look, like the peak of the mountain is still a long way there because there's still so many more clinicians and clinics that are just fabulous fabulous fit for using this technology, and it'll upgrade what they're doing. And so for us to be able to reach those people, it's very humbling to know there's still a long way to go.
Totally.
So definitely want to learn, from some of those mistakes along the way too. Kind of to the other part of the question, I think some of them were, related to people. So early on, I've learned that having one person. There's actually a great story that I'd love to share. A great metaphor or kind of a lesson that I learned from a business coach, and he showed me this video that if you have a hot tub like a whirlpool and you get all the jets pointing in one direction, the water will like flow around like in a toilet bowl, right? The water will be flowing around. And if you put a tennis ball in there, and it'll go around in that circle fast, in the matter of like several seconds. And if you take just one of the jets, so if you have 6 jets pointing in one direction, you take just one, so you have 5 going in the same direction, one going against the grain, going in the opposite direction. That what was a whirlpool flowing around will just become like a flicker, a shadow of its former self. It'll be so slow. So that same tennis ball, to complete the loop, now might take a full minute instead of like a few seconds. And so for a team, if you have just one person pointing in the opposite direction, that can have a disproportionately negative effect on the entire team. So the morale, the engagement, the kind of dynamic of the team overall, I've learned, is so much more important than any one person. And so I've actually had to learn to toughen up a little bit, because we had one where I would just keep giving someone a second chance, and I came to feel too much of a softie, I guess.
Yeah,
right? But,
we're human. Totally. Yeah.
But that was one, and then just so now that we've learned, we hire for cultural fit, and are really more intentional about that. We'd rather have someone who's a good cultural fit, and then teach them our stuff, or right, someone who's open-minded and growth-minded and can learn, and is a good cultural fit, is way more valuable than someone who might already come in with all the skills, but is going to be is going to kind of sabotage the team dynamic, right? Like that team dynamic, I've learned, is more important than everything else. So that's definitely a lesson. Another one is I spent tens of thousands of dollars, just under $100,000 on building some software that I thought that would like be perfect for our office, and designed it essentially for me, and didn't get enough input, enough feedback from like the actual people who would be using it, and so it was kind of a bust. It kind of sat on the shelf for a while. We've been able to use elements of it, but it was essentially the problem was that it was like a version of an EMR, electronic health records, or electronic medical records, to like take notes and track progress specifically for how we do things in NeuFit sessions. And the lesson in hindsight, it's like right. But the lesson was basically, look, clinics that are using the device, they already have their own software system, medical record systems, and so to use this, unless it integrates in, like it's an extra step. Totally. And when it comes to taking notes, the last thing they want is any extra work, right? Totally. And so, kind of creating that in a little bit of a vacuum, I think was a lesson. So there's been many, but those are probably the top 2 that jump out.
Yeah, I feel like that falls in that same camp of like build it and they will come mentality.
Yeah, it was definitely one of those.
Yeah,
definitely.
Which is by far one of the biggest mistakes I feel like people make. I definitely want to respect your time and this place's time here, and so I have a round of rapid fire questions for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it's whatever is the first thing that comes to mind. You ready? What's your best business advice?
Ooh, gosh. Might be around that, what we were just talking about, related to team dynamics, like the health of the team has to be more important than any one individual. There's so many good learnings in business, but I think business is a vehicle for growth too. So seeing it as that is probably helpful. Like if the goal is growth, and our relationships and our businesses and things like that are vehicles for that, but seeing it as a way to always be growing, and using it as kind of a measuring stick of our growth, I think is a good mindset too.
I think that's why business is so addicting. I was just talking to Kaylin Piles on our most recent episode, and she said the same thing. It's like business is like the greatest form of personal development. What's your best marketing advice?
figure out what is actually on top of mind for your customers and talk to them about that. Like, think about what problems they're really trying to solve and talk to them about those. So you'll be talking to them about the things that are going on in their own minds.
Which you did over the course of 6 or 7 years.
Which I learned initially, and then when we started selling the device, initially, I know this is supposed to be rapid fire, sorry.
You're good,
but,
yeah.
Initially I started talking to people, learn this lesson again, right? Like in developing kind of these approaches and things like that, definitely listen to things like that, and then had to learn it again, because when we started selling the device, I was talking to people about the things that I wanted, which was getting better outcomes with patients and like having these wonderful interactions. But if you talk to a practice owner, for example, they already are doing good work, think they're doing good work, and for the most part they are. And so for them, their top 3 problems might be around either generating more leads, getting more patients in the door, or retaining patients, or hiring staff, or making operations more efficient, or insurance reimbursements. Their top 5 are not going to be about getting better outcomes with patients. And so
right.
being able to take the work that we're doing to get better outcomes and talk about how it increases patient satisfaction, how it drives referrals, how it helps with retention, how it helps with training staff, being able to take that and translate it into the things that are important to them has been a big lesson for us.
Totally. Yeah, I think it's often said like sell the vacation, not the destination, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like show people the vision of like where they want to be.
That's right. That's great.
What's your favorite part about entrepreneurship?
The challenges, the opportunities, it feels like a game. I mean, it's like there's so many, how dynamic it is, managing the different variables, evolving as a person and changing. We talk about these changes of identity, kind of figuring out all that stuff and being able to apply theoretical lessons in the real world situations. And there's kind of the dynamic nature of all of it.
Spoken like a true athlete.
Yeah, right.
When are you the most productive?
So I'm going to give 2 answers. One is in the morning when I wake up, is when I'm really most focused and dialed in. So I wrote my book. I did 2 hours every day over the course of about a year, from like 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. before the kids woke up, before my wife got out of bed. Like when I just had quiet focus time. So I'd say that. But then I'd say learning some of these lessons of entrepreneurship, I'm most productive when I'm not the one who's doing stuff. When I'm focused more on supporting my team and they're doing stuff and I'm more in that support role. And that's been a big identity shift.
I love that.
Tying back to that.
That is an incredible mindset, honestly. Mm-hmm. Especially learning how to delegate, I feel like is a big piece of that as well.
And let go, because I had like for a while when I was the one doing it, it's kind of tough to like let go. But someone who's focused on that, they might be better at it to begin with than I am, But even if I was just as good, if they're able to focus on that as part of their full-time job, they're going to be way better at it, because I don't have the bandwidth and the attention to be good at it.
Totally. Who's your inspiration?
Oh gosh, people like a few categories. I mean, people like John Wooden, Naval Ravikant. People have these kind of wonderful wisdom to share, and then our patients and the people that help. I mean, when things are tough, there's ups and downs in businesses, but when things are tough, I look at the impact that we're making. The people who were in wheelchairs and are walking again, or the athletes who were supposed to miss the NFC Championship game because of injury and got back and played, or the different things, and that motivates me. I can tell myself, all right, if we're making an impact like that, you know what? In the long game, we're going to be good. Right? Mm-hmm. So that, and then I mean, certainly like my family and children and stuff, like seeing them, like I think that inspires me to try to set a good example. And
that's cool, man.
Yeah.
I have one last question. Before I ask that question, though, I want to acknowledge you, man, for everything kind of you just mentioned about just like serving a lot of people, coming from this unique place of an engineer that's now found himself into the health world and the fitness world, and serving a lot of people and leading a team and having a family and going to a Circus LA
that's right.
here later today, and just like acknowledging like everything you're doing, a book you've written, and it's all great. I think people are getting a lot of value out of it, and I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you. Well, same to you, to pivot from being a clinician to now helping other clinicians with their marketing and messaging and doing the podcast and everything. It's cool, man.
Cool.
Good work.
So before I ask my last question, though, what's your plug? Where can people find you?
So definitely our website, which is www.neu.fit, N-E-U, like neurological.fit. There, and then social media wise, we're most active on Instagram at NeuFit, NEUFIT, RFP for rehab, fitness, and performance.
Cool. We'll put that all in the show notes. Last question. It's really your best piece of advice for other entrepreneurs out there. So people that listen to the show are generally business oriented, they're gym owners, they're trainers, or chiros, or doctors, or whatever. What would maybe be your best piece of advice for them, or even to your previous self if you were to like start over from ground zero? Like, what would be like the best piece of advice you could give to that person just to make sure they're moving in the right direction or focusing on the right thing?
Probably speaks to a point that you talked about earlier of like, you got to put in the time. People want to be all the way at the end in a year or something like that. I think it's take the time to really learn your thing. If you can go deeper than anyone in one thing, you'll be valuable, and then you can kind of learn the business around it. So I think some people are business people looking for an opportunity. Some people have an opportunity and then have to learn business. And both are valuable because you need both. But whether your thing is business or it's that kind of thing that you're offering to the world, the product or service, go really deep in that thing and get really good on that thing and never stop improving and never stop learning at that thing, and then apply what you learn at each step along the way.
Master your craft and everything else figures itself out.
Yeah.
Love that, man. Thanks for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you.